Hi guys, Actually, I can't tell you my real name because then they might find me and put me in jail for about 30 years. And I don't want that. Yes, I'm facing a jail sentence for my art because I paint graffiti on buildings. Good ones too. I know, because they sell for millions of dollars, but let's start from the beginning. I've had a talent for drawing since I was really young, and I first scribbled on the wallpaper. Then I grew up and went to school. Instead of using walls for my masterpieces, I started using desks and chalkboards. Of course, my teachers didn't like seeing caricatures of themselves, but I drew people the way they were, exactly as I saw them. I was a true artist. For my art, I was often kicked out of classes or punished. Basically, my school didn't approve of my talents. And then my mother tried to get clever. Knowing that I loved to draw, she sent me to an art school. She thought that they would make a real Picasso out of me if I went there 3 times a week. I must admit that at that art school, they gave me a lot of useful information, but they did it in a very boring way. Most importantly, they didn't let me draw whatever I wanted. Once in a lesson, the teacher told us to draw a vase, but instead of a stupid vase, I decided to draw him. You would have to see the drawing to understand why I was kicked out of class. On the way home, I saw 2 strange guys in hoods painting something with spray paint on the wall of a small shop. I wondered who they were and went over to them to find out. The hooded guys were in a rush and didn't want to talk to me. They even chased me off. I heard a police siren go off behind me. The 2 guys saw a patrol car driving up and took off. They left so quickly that they forgot their backpacks and spray cans. These guys were seriously weird, but they weren't what caught my eyes. No, what I was interested in was their art. They clearly painted what they wanted, just like I used to do on the wallpaper in the living room as a child. I picked up a spray can and tried to paint. I didn't like some of the lines on their painting, so I corrected them. I was so caught up in what I was doing that I stopped noticing what was happening around me. I didn't even realize the guys had come back. They were standing right behind me, and I got ready for a fight. After all, I took their stuff, and they weren't exactly friendly when we met. But they just praised me. They said that I had talent and that I could become an excellent graffiti artist. They also told me where I could find them. Then, they grabbed their backpacks and ran away. When I got home, I sat down on my computer and started looking up what graffiti was. I found out that it meant painting on walls. I also found out that it was illegal because by painting on buildings, you damage someone's private property. You can be fined or even imprisoned for something like that. I considered it. It turned out that if I expressed myself the way I wanted to, I could end up in jail. But on the other hand, I could draw what I wanted, where I wanted, and most importantly, people could see my work. After weighing all the pros and cons, I decided that I wanted to meet those guys. That same night, I slipped out to meet them. I changed into an outfit that made me harder to see. I met up with them at the old abandoned construction site where no one went anymore. Here, you would be able to paint without worrying about getting caught. I wanted to get to know the guys and introduce myself, but one of them immediately interrupted me, saying that names weren't allowed. If someone outside recognized our names, then it would be much easier to catch us. If I wanted, I could come up with a nickname to use whenever I painted. Then this guy told me his, Red. I nodded, but I couldn't think of a cool nickname for myself yet. Red gave me a couple of spray cans and showed me how to use them, how to apply paint correctly, and how to make lines of different thicknesses and shapes. Unlike the other art lessons I'd taken, I actually liked this one. No one pressured me or told me what to draw, and instead of stuffy rooms, I was in the open air. It was an all-new territory for me. I got so carried away that I didn't even notice when morning came and the sun started to rise. I agreed to meet the guys someplace else and ran home. We got together almost every day to paint the wall of someone's garage or house, but I quickly got bored, especially once I had already learned everything I could from them. For me, their antics seemed like nothing more than petty vandalism. I wanted people to recognize my work. I wanted my graffiti to inspire someone. So I decided to do it alone. All day after school, I wandered around the city and wondered how could I draw attention to my work. Then, as I was passing by the city hall, I noticed a car from a TV channel and a journalist interviewing some city official. I figured that if there are TV cameras here when nothing is happening, then if graffiti shows up on the walls of a city hall, a bunch of reporters will show up. It seemed like the perfect place for my next job. I already knew which building I wanted to paint. All that was left was to buy the supplies and wait for the night to come. When the clock struck midnight, I packed my bag, put on my hood, and carefully, so as to not wake anyone, left the house. I finally got to the city hall and, checking to see that no one was around, got to work. While I was painting, I saw flashing lights from a police car that was patrolling the city streets. I urgently needed to hide somewhere, because I didn't want to get arrested for vandalism. There was nothing around except for the trash cans near the building. Well, I didn't have many options, and since I didn't want to go to the police station, I had to hide in one of them. When the car finally drove past, I was able to climb out, even though I smelled terrible. Oh well, art requires sacrifice. The situation with the police made me work even faster, so I got the job done in a few hours. By the time morning came, I was already in bed. Although I didn't manage to sleep for very long because school started pretty soon after. I went downstairs. There, my mom and dad were already watching TV. And guess which program they were watching? The news. In fact, my dad kept trying to switch to something else, but all the channels were showing the same story about me, or more precisely, about Raymond, as I called myself. I took the nickname from one of the characters of a kids show I watched when I was little. They even showed the graffiti itself on TV. Look, I covered the walls near the main entrance with falling money to represent the fact that money was being wasted there. I thought it was pretty witty. Do you know what was really interesting? An expert from an art gallery was called to the scene, and he assessed my graffiti as a masterpiece of modern art. He called it something like an act of struggle against the modern pillars of society and blah blah blah. He described my work with pretentious words and endowed it with a hidden meaning that I didn't put into it at all. And then he announced that the art board had valued this piece of graffiti at $2 million. Can you imagine? $2 million! Some of those present even began to offer a higher amount. But since the drawing couldn't be moved, I just gave the administration a gift, increasing the value of their building by $2 million. I was shocked. I just wanted to show what I could do and attract attention, but the result was way better than what I expected. The crowd even shouted my name, or rather, my nickname. I actually felt upset that I wouldn't receive at least some of that money. Although I liked people paying attention to my work, it wasn't exactly what I wanted. I wanted to awaken strong feelings in people, to open their eyes to the beauty of the world. For the rest of the day, I wandered around the city, thinking about what had happened, until my own feet led me to a small theater. It was a small and dilapidated building. Different clubs made up of small children all met there. As I got closer, I saw a huge sign that said that the theater would be torn down, and in its place, a designer salon with things and other stuff would be built. Already, hundreds of people stood on the steps of the theater, protesting against the demolition. They were the children's worried parents. That's when I got the idea of how the great Raymond could benefit people. It took me several days to prepare for my new job. I barely had time to get everything together. The very next day, construction equipment was supposed to destroy the theater. It turned out that I had only one night left, but I didn't need any more time. When it got dark, I was already standing with 2 large bags in front of the theater. It took me a ton of effort to bring them here. I knew that I couldn't do it alone, not just in one night. So I called my friends. Well, you already know them. They brought a huge tarp, which is something else I really needed for my plan. There was scaffolding near the walls of the theater, which really helped with the task at hand. I don't know what we would have done without them. The piece was so big. We often had to check it against a sketch in a notebook so as to not miss a single detail. The sun was already rising when we finished.